Well, thanks for coming. I'm really passionate about this area of long-term athletic development. I was saying I've worked my first 3 years in my career was spent in the elite high school program, working with a whole range of athletes. Then I worked with the Australian Olympic team, going to the London Olympics with swimming and diving. And I've worked with rowing and a bunch of other sports, and then spent the last 10 years in professional basketball. But to start with, who's excited about, or who enjoyed last season? Men's basketball, we got fans. Yeah, it was pretty good, it was fun. Who's looking forward to this season coming? Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So what are we going to talk about is this concept around long-term athletic development. But what I hate coming to presentations when you walk out and go, I got nothing out of that. What am I going to apply when I leave here? And so what I want to give is try to some practical applications that you can take to your next session. What do we got? Students? We got parents and coaches? Manny, what we have? Okay. So, like I said, I've been involved 20 years. I've worked with a range of different athletes. I understand the full spectrum of athletic development, from kids all the way to the elite end. So, and I was asking myself, when Matt asked me to present, I was thinking about what can I give you that's going to help you translate that or apply to your athlete that you're working with. So, to start with, what is the problem? What's the problem with our youth programs? The first one is we're just undertraining our players and overplaying. We're playing too many games. You think about basketball, they talk about AUU, they're playing 2 to 3 games a week. When do they actually get time to develop? And so, and that's common across a lot of sports. We're undertraining and overtraining. That's a big problem. We're putting adult competition schedules on kids. I don't know if 82 games in the NBA season is a grind. That's why I left the NBA. I was like, I've had enough of a plane, a bus. Like, imposing a lot of travel and a lot of games on kids is limiting their development. We're trying to put adult training programs on kids. So we're going to take the weight training that I did with Giannis and we're going to give it to a 12-year-old. Doesn't seem appropriate, does it? But that's what we're doing. We're giving kids adult training programs and expecting them to adapt the same way. And then in general, our kids are less active. They're not outdoors as much, and so they're not developing the gross motor skills that underpin most of the sports that we play and love. And so we're underdeveloped in that area. And then we're really focused on winning. And so we're process-orientated as a coach, and we're not developing kids through training and the development part of kids' development. So those are the issues, and what we tend to get is this wonderful resources like long-term athletic development. So Canadian Sports Institute developed this wonderful long-term athletic development model. This is what sports look like. So if we look at this here, this is the journey across an athlete's life. So we start active start. So these are the ages, chronological age, and then these are the training ages. So how many years of training have you had? And then we go through these different phases. The fundamental stage, learning to train, training to train, learning to compete, training to compete, learning to win. So like the pros, winning for a living. So you're the pros here. And then post-career, having an active life. And so they've done this wonderful job of giving us a model of what the sporting life looks like, and then giving us some principles of training and how we organize training to build us through that. And that's wonderful. Well, I would come back to what am I going to do the next training session? What am I doing on Monday? That's nice, but what am I coaching to the kids when it comes to Monday? And that's what I want to talk about. How do I organize, how do I apply this long-term athletic model into my session on Monday? So my first recommendation is these resources. So this is my mentor. He's a British track and field coach. Became Australia's first track and field coach for the Australian Institute of Sport back in the 80s. Started in track and field and then became one of the first strength and conditioning coaches in Australia. A real legend and a forerunner in our space. And now we have career strength and conditioning coaches. But 20 years ago, 30 years ago, they didn't exist. So they generally came from track and field. Once he got to the end of his career, he started to look back at the pathway, like looking at that long term and realizing that the kids were more obese, less active, lacked a lot of physical qualities. So he started to develop some resources. So if you want to, there's no chance that we can cover everything that's in these books. So I recommend you go get them, read them. They're easy to read, but they're really applied and practical books too, okay? So my first point, expand your knowledge and understanding of dealing with youth athletes and how you might train them at a better level. This is a great resource. So we're going to talk about what's in these resources, so give you an idea of what's required. This is an example of his framework, and it's a lot. We're not going to go through all of it. But what I say, this is the journey of athletic development. And instead of being across the page, we're down. So we have a physical journey. We have a physical competency progressions. We have a technical journey, the technical being the skills of your sport. So if it's basketball, like shooting, dribbling, passing, they're the technical development, right? And then learning how to compete, so your competition and arena skills, learning how to compete, that's important. Mental well-being, so you just came from, did you come from Bobby? So this development, and then nutrition development. So you think about Luca, what do you think's holding him back? There's somewhere in his development, his thoughts and habits around nutrition are not to the level and are limiting his ability to be the best player in the world. He could be the best player in the world, I think. But obviously his conditioning, his weight is limiting his ability to truly reach his potential. So if any one of these things are missing, you're not going to reach your maximum potential as an athlete, particularly on the world stage in highly competitive sports. If we look to this is just a framework around movement, and we're going to talk about these things. But how we progress these things, right? Like we talked about adult programs. If you're in an adult program, we're just straight to here. We just bypass all this, and we would just try to overdevelop kids and water down adult programs. But we have to work our way through these progressions. So again, this is a nice model, and it's really beautiful, and it makes sense. But it still doesn't tell me what to do on Monday. So let's go dig a little more. I call physical literacy, it's like a movement competency. You need to have fundamental movement skills together with your fundamental sport skills, and you're going to have a movement literacy as you would like English literacy. You'd have, if you have a very good vocabulary of words, you can put those words into sentences into a book. You can communicate that information. Same with physical movement. If I have fundamental movement skills, that means I can apply more complex movements. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. So what are the fundamental movement skills that I'm talking about? So they're like gross motor skills, basic motor skills. Most kids don't have the basic skills anymore. Run, jump, catch, land, throw, swim. These are all basic skills, and a lot of our kids don't have these basic skills. And we're going to show, AJ came in this week, we did an assessment on him, and we're going to show you some examples of, he's the best player in the country, but he definitely doesn't have all the fundamental movement skills down pat. And so we need to address it, right? So these skills are crucial to developing your motor skills, and we need to develop them. So these fundamental skills, I put them into streams, what I call exercise streams. And what that means is, say for a squat, what's the easiest squat movement that you know of? Who can give me the easiest bilateral squat exercise?
you want me to come down or just do it up here?
No, you just said tell me.
Just like how to do it?
No, like what's the basic squat? Just what's your first squat exercise to teach somebody?
The first thing I would ever say to them is kind of act like you're going to sit down on a chair.
Yeah.
And make sure that you are keeping your knees pushed outwards.
Mm-hmm.
And keep your chin and your head kind of back. Don't just lean forward.
Right. So that's what's the hardest squatting exercise? What's at the other end of the stream? What's the most hardest complex squat you can do? Doesn't have to be perfect. Think of like a overhead snatch squat. You've snatched it and you got to raise up with a huge amount of weight. So that's the one end of the spectrum, the elite end, and then you got the basic end of just sitting on the toilet. But there's a journey, right? So you go from that to an overhead squat, to a loaded squat, to more loaded squat, band squat, chain squat. It's this journey across the stream of exercises. Does that make sense? So if I think of it now, that same process, and I do it for push. Let's say I say horizontal push. What's the easiest pushing exercise I've got? Push-up. What's the most advanced version of a push-up? Doesn't have to be exact. Bench press. Max bench press. Bench press with bands or chains on it. So again, you got this spectrum. So if you think of movement in that way, I can go through all my pulling, horizontal pull, vertical pull, bracing, so trunk movement, rotational movements. I can start to build out an exercise stream of movement that I can maybe potentially evaluate the human potential, right? So here's a list of different kind of skills, movement skills that we can evaluate and look at, really dependent on your sport. So these fundamentals create the basis of athletic development. And then we add strength and power training, and then we got multi-directional speed. I kind of see these as like maths. If you, again, like the English version, mathematics, if you understand the basics of mathematics, you're going to be able to work out more complex mathematical equations, right? If there's something missing in your mathematical knowledge, you're not going to be able to truly work out more complex training or math problems. The same with physical literacy. If I don't have if there's something missing in my movement, when I get to that, more complex movement strategies, I'm not going to be able to execute it. There's going to be something missing, if that makes sense. And so we want to make sure they have this strong foundation, a broad foundation of movement that they can execute in their sport in the biggest arena, under the most pressure, with the most skill. So my second recommendation is this book. It's one of the books. So this one, and it teaches us where to start. So we think about the exercise stream. Everybody in this room is at a different place along that streamline, right? So some are at the basic push-up, some are kind of in the middle, and we might have some powerlifters that are at the end that have really a huge amount of strength. So we're trying to figure out where you are on that stream so I know where to start training on Monday. So if I have an 8-year-old, he's probably going to do a wall push-up because they're not really that strong. So that might be a step back. But I know now that I want to get to a push-up, so I'm going to progress. That's where I'm progressing him to. And then once they get the push-up and they're really good at that, now I think we can introduce the bench press. Now over time we can overload the bench press like we normally would. But normally we bypass all this and just chuck them on the bench and the kid can't even do a push-up. Does that make sense? It doesn't. If you can't do a push-up, there's no way you're competent to do a bench press. And in fact, I've found over the years, if the more kids can do push-ups, the better prepared they are for the bench press, and they get better output numbers. So I highly recommend that resource. Again, I can't cover all the content. There's so much in here, right? All the different tests of all the different streams, but we can evaluate and figure out where to start. So in strength and conditioning, we generally train what we measure. So if you go to a high school gym, we're going to do bench, deadlift, pull-ups, squat. There's no evaluation of movement competency before they even get to those. We just chuck them under a bar and load them. So again, we start with the movement competency assessment. Do you have basic range of motion? So here's an example from the book of a hamstring. If you don't have flexibility, it's going to impact movement. So we need to evaluate their flexibility. So what we do, we scale it from 1 to 5. 1 being poor, average, desirable. We can look at the angles. Pretty easy to do, right? If we got everybody up here and we looked at the same thing, I bet you we're going to see different results, right? And then I give it a score. I think all of us in the room could do that. And then all we do, we go through each movement, each body part, and evaluate the range of motion. We need to understand what normal range of motion looks like, but then now we can scale it and go, right, you've got 3 things that are really poor, and we got to figure those out. There's a movement, front bridge. So I have 2 parts of this. Can you hold it, and what position do you have? Can you hold it? Can you get into a good planking position? No, you're sagging through, okay. We need to address that. Now, if you could hold position, can you hold it for 2 minutes, which is the standard that we set? If you can't, you don't have enough endurance. Okay. And then another example is the landing stream. Can you hop and stick without folding over? Can you hold good positions? What distance can you cover? So it's not just the output, but how you did it too. So there's 2 parts that go with it. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah. So we just keep working through the different streams to evaluate you as an athlete and create a profile for you. So we've created, Calvin created these measurements. So like we talked about, if you don't measure it, you're not going to work on it. We've got some standards. And it really resonates with kids, right? We're competitive. They go, hey, you, I'm here, I want to get to here. Okay, let's work on this exercise. So we're going to work on it. So here's an example of the different, trunk integrity is one of our streams, lower body landing and functional leg strength, lower body general strength, leg power, et cetera, and then we start to evaluate where we're at on that spectrum, okay? So this can start to look at it like a training program almost, and we start to string it together. These are flexibility tests, so these are all the flexibility or some of the flexibility tests and some of the evaluations that we can look at. So whenever I get a new athlete, so we had AJ arrive Monday, this is exactly what we did. We sat in my office, say, tell me your injury history, tell me about your training history, what are your goals, how do you like to be coached, evaluate all that stuff. And then the first thing we did was the movement competency screen. We spent an hour and we go, right, show me your hamstring, glutes, calf, internal, external rotation, neck rotation. If you can't rotate your neck 90 degrees and the coach goes, right, on the side, I want you to keep your head on a swivel and when the ball comes, you're gonna go, right? If you can't rotate your neck, now because I can't rotate my neck, I have to open up. That means it takes me longer to go this direction, doesn't it? So all those competencies are important. So we went through all of that, and we're going to talk about this in more detail. And then after that, we did the more advanced testing, force plates, muscle strength testing, et cetera, okay? But not before the movement competency. So there's some things that we have to address with AJ in this area before we even get to some of this stuff. So here's an example. This is not AJ, it's somebody, I can't remember, somebody from last year. So this is the flexibility test. So I normally use the scale of 3. Calvin likes 5, but I think it's too much. Like 3, good, maintain it, move on. 1, poor, we need to fix it, it's a problem. And 2, it's okay, we're just gonna work on it in training, okay? Simple scale, and then I put it into each of the body components. So you can see here, there's an issue here. What's going on here? What's going on here? Hip internal rotation. But the rest looks pretty good. There's some areas that we can tidy up, right? So once I've done the evaluation, I can do a summary. So we had 2, like I said, the knee to wall and the hip internal rotation. and we said these areas are average, probably need to address it. And so the action items out of that information is, I'm probably going to go to the athletic trainer or the PT and say, what's going on with this knee to wall? Why is it limited? Is there something we can do about it? Is it a structural issue? Is it something we can make better? And so now we've evaluated it, we're going to see if it's getting better. Do we want it to get better? Same with the hip internal. Is there an impingement in the hip or some issues with his hip? And then we can move into the mobility. We can put an intervention in place that's really targeted. We're targeting areas that we know aren't quite where they need to be, and we're going to address that into part of his mobility routine. Does that make sense? So and then we get more advanced stuff. I use a camera. This is a company in Australia called ViewMotion. I film it, upload it to the cloud, and within 24 hours, I have a full kinematic analysis of their acceleration and running and different things. So looking at their technique of movement. So we talked about gait to running. How well do you run? Can we improve that? Of course we can. So that's become part of our evaluation process. So again, like we did with the flexibility, what are the summary points of all the different movements? And what are the action items out of it? Now I've got a really good place to start. I know exactly where I need to start on Monday. So if I think squatting, lunging, single leg squats, bracing, flexibility, all that stuff. Now, and it's not all performance orientated. We'll get to that. So we're going to test his vertical jump. Oh, we did test it on the fourth place, but we're going to test other physical qualities too. But this is the starting point. If he doesn't have these, then I know that he's not ready for some of this more complex stuff. So it helps organize my training. And like we said, if you're not measuring it, you're not going to train it, and you're going to miss this opportunity to build a broad base of movement skills or fundamental movement skills that we know leads into complex training. Does that make sense? Yep. Good. So my third recommendation is, once you got the evaluation, let's allocate some time to it on a consistent basis. Why not put it into the end of your warm-up, allocate 10 minutes of your practice to work on these basic skills. 10 minutes, 3-4 times a week, ends up being 40 minutes. If it's 5 times a week, 50 minutes. They're going to start to improve their movement, and it's going to translate into their skill work. They're going to, by the time they get to me, I'm not getting an AJ that can't do a front bridge. He can't do a single leg squat. So if you ask me, someone at this end, what do I receive when I get an athlete? I want somebody that has competency, and then we can build the capacities on top of that. Does that make sense? So that gives a fair structure to it, and the thought process that I have when looking at an athlete. And it doesn't matter. I did the same thing at the Bucks. As soon as I got an athlete, we're going through this evaluation process. And I can tell you that they all have some type of deficiency. Maybe they have an old injury that has, say they had a really bad ankle sprain, and now they have limited dorsiflexion or plantar flexion range. That's going to impact all the way up. Because if I can't bend my foot, or I can't do this, that's going to impact my ability to move. I want to know that. Sometimes it's structural, you just can't change it. But at least I know that. Maybe we have to do different things to protect them. Or maybe there are things that we can do to address it. So, did any of that seem super complex? Pretty straightforward. Like, I think everyone in this room could do it. Evaluate a push-up, evaluate a pull-up, evaluate planking, squatting. Any movement that we see, do I need to work on it? They're doing great. Let's advance it. Organize your exercise streams. You always got a program built out just by working on the stream. I got to put these 3 things that need to be worked on. We're going to put them in the program 3 times a week, 10 minutes. So I want to close there. So I hope you kind of get something you can take away, some practical skills. Highly recommend these books and resources if you want to expand and learn more. But something you could easily apply. You don't need any technology. iPhone. So that's all I had. Go AJ, go. Show him the video. Oh yeah, that looks pretty good. That looks pretty bad. Okay, I got to work on it. So then when I say to him in the training program, Okay, he's ready to go. So I'm going to finish there, and I think we got some questions.
Organized sports in the fundamental
Yep.
movements.
I think so, yeah. That's the big problem. There's too much adult training, like adult schedules of games, and there's no development. The ratio is off. There should be a little bit of competition, particularly at the younger ages, and more focus on development, on play, that for sure. You see it really in the basketball world, the AAU circuit, that's playing way too many games, getting overuse injuries, lack of development. And so it's really, if you look at the NBA now, it's a ton of Europeans or overseas players that come from systems where they're really focused on development and a little bit of playing. And then that shifts obviously as they mature, whereas in the US there's a lot of games and very little training. And that may be why we're not seeing as many transcend to there's still a lot of good players, don't get me wrong, but not ascending to be the best players. And so that's what I think we're seeing. And that maybe not just in basketball, but across different sports as well. So yeah, good question. Yeah.
The question I have, for most of the slides, we were looking at a physically grown man. How do we temper down these kinds of skills? When do we introduce weights? What are appropriate weights that we should be aiming for? I'm thinking of people that are in 6th and 7th grade in some cases, and they're playing in a Bantam basketball league, for example. And
Yeah.
What should we even be introducing weights yet at that age, or these functional movements that you're talking about?
Yeah. So the question was, when should we introduce weight training and things for kids? My answer is, like, if you follow the streams, so you start from the basic to the end, if you understand the journey that's going to come up, think about their training age. Obviously, you're not going to, you got to earn the right. I kind of earn the right to progress to the next step. Show me that you have, let's talk about front bridge. Okay, first step is can you get into position? Yes, great. Second step, can I now hold it for 30 seconds? Yes. Can we hold it now for a minute? Can we now hold it for, you know what I mean? That's going to take a while to get through that, earn the right to go through those steps. Okay, well, how do you overload it once you get to 2 minutes? Now what? What are some other ways we could overload that specific movement? Go one leg up. I could draw the alphabet. I could now go maybe one arm, one leg. So now I've just made it more complex. I haven't added any load yet. Then I could might add like a 25-pound plate on their back, 45-pound plate. You see how it's just like this? It's not about as little to do with when. It's more you show me, demonstrate that you have confidence to move to the next step. So if you lay out those streams, you know exactly where they're at, and I know exactly where I'm trying to get. So if I reverse engineer it, okay, so like AJ, where's AJ? AJ's probably around here, but I need to get him over here. AJ, this is the pathway we're going to take. So for example, I was saying that the first group, the rear foot elevated split squat. So we get one leg back, go down. Drew Holiday is at this end, 5 sets of 5 and 400 pounds. I had AJ doing body weight on Monday. He's down this end. But AJ, hey, Drew Holiday does this, competitive. Okay, I'm going to earn the right to get there, right? But he's not going to get there this year. It's going to be, Drew Holiday, the 30-plus-year-old veteran, but that's the journey that he needs to get on. And so I think it becomes less about when and more about figuring out the starting point through your evaluation process, because everyone's different. The other side that we didn't touch on much is peak height velocity or period of growth. So in the literature, they talk about peak height velocity, meaning where you're really growing, 6 inches in 6 months. So if you think about that process, And everyone different, like the windows are different for everybody, right? You got late bloomers and early bloomers. But during that period, the bones are growing, right? So the bones grow first, and then the ligaments and muscles kind of get stretched. The nervous system gets stretched, and now all of a sudden they can't catch it, they can't run, they're tripping over themselves. If you see that period, we need to adapt the program. So we need to probably regress and go back to some more basic rudimentary movements so they can coordinate their body again and then build back up. If you ever seen kids with Osgood slatters, it's normally when you get a lot of growth, you're playing a lot of sport, particularly jumping or cutting, you'll see the big bone growth on the front of their knee. That's a classic sign that they've done too much training during a growth period. So if I see that, like AJ has it on his left, I saw it, big Osgood slatters, trying to do too much activity, competition during periods of growth. Bad combination. So when you're in that phase, my recommendation is you got to reduce the amount of competition, go back to some more rudimentary training to help them coordinate their muscles. They've just stretched it. Now you got to help them get back to some basics. You might have to go back to just standing, one-hand shooting. Go back to some basic dribbling. Teach them how to run again, how to jump again with this new body. Okay, so I think a lot of people make mistakes. They just keep trucking on with the adult training schedule, game schedule, and that's where you get into trouble, I think. So something to think about, something to be aware of. Any other questions?
Who's winning the NBA championship this year?
What's that?
Who do you got winning the NBA championship?
I hope the Thunder. I don't want Boston to win it.
We're from Massachusetts. So
Don't want Boston to win it. Don't like Boston. Don't like Boston. AJ loves Boston. I'm like that. But I think it's going to be Boston and Thunder in the finals. I think if I really true to myself, Boston has the most talent.
nice.
They should win it. But I don't want them to win it.
I'm just wondering, with some of these players that you've seen, they've gone out, they've served a mission.
Yep.
Do you usually see a big change in their functional movement in that time?
Yes. Yep. They lose function. I think a lot of it's their conditioning and coordination. So it takes them a while. It takes them a whole season just to get their feet underneath them again. Just more from a conditioning, speed, power, and even just skill-wise, it takes them to get up to the speed of the game. It takes them a while. So yeah, it's an issue for sure. Yeah, it's a problem. We just got to appreciate that it takes time to get back. Yeah. Yeah.
So for some of those like assessments that you had us do with AJ, I was wrong on a few of them from what you said, but is there much of a difference? Like you said the coach's eye at one point, like how much of it is okay to just be kind of like, well, I was a little bit off on this, but this is what I know really needs attention. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
where, like are we qualified to be making those assessments basically?
I think so. I think a lot of you coach sport, right? Like you know what a good, let's say you coach javelin. You got to have some kind of idea what it should look like. And then I think the more you see, and this comes down to experience, the more you see, you go, maybe my view of what good and bad shifts a little bit. To like, that's actually pretty good. I'm being hard, or I'm too easy, and that's actually really bad. So it's not too, it's kind of like repetition. The more you see what the differences are. And then you kind of, your coaching eye gets better. So I think it takes some repetition for sure to figure out what good and bad looks like. So I've been in basketball now 10 years, so you kind of get a feel for what good basketball players look like. I think if I went to football, it might be a little different. I'd have to readjust my coaching eye a little bit. So I think it depends on the sport, the level of athlete you're working with, But again, at the end of the day, it's like, do we need to address this? Do we not? or do we just we should work on it and make it a little better? So if you keep it simple like that, don't overcomplicate it. Because every movement's going to be like slight. If I get a hammer, every time I strike it, it's going to be slightly different. Same with movement. Every squat's going to look a little different. And so the movement variability is actually a good thing, right? Because if I play basketball, not every shot looks the same. So there's a scope of movement variability. So I'm just really looking for, is there something grossly wrong with the way this person moves? And if there is, then what's going on? So that means I might need to do further assessment. I might not have the skills for that, so I'll go, hey, I'm going to send you to a PT or athletic trainer to address, let's say it's an ankle issue or a mobility issue. What's going on here? That's normally what I look, it's like an initial screen to figure out. It's kind of like what a doctor does. They'll do some initial screens, and then if they find something, they go, oh, we're going to do some further testing to figure out what's going on here. You know, it's kind of what we do too. So it's just an initial, where do I start? Where does it kind of direct me? Hopefully there's nothing that's like, it's pretty good, we're just going to work on a couple of little things and we can move forward, which is that what AJ does, right? Nothing major, a couple of little things we're going to work on, and then I know we can progress to more advanced training pretty quick. Yeah. So, yeah.
How much emphasis do you put on flexibility and mobility?
Yeah. So the question was how much emphasis I put on mobility, flexibility. I say, me personally, I probably don't put as much on it. I try to as in, I mean, we had a yoga instructor, so I had somebody come in specially to really focus on long stretches for over long times. So I suppose I do evaluate. I'll dedicate time at the end of practice to do it. I kind of see movement, full range movement as flexibility. Let's say if I get a parallel bars and I do like a beyond horizontal, that's stretching the pec. If I do full range pull-ups, that's taking that muscle group through the full range. So I try to do training that's full range of movements generally. That's going to work on dynamic flexibility rather than just static flexibility. And then, like I said, if I'll evaluate the flexibility, and if there's specific spaces that aren't good, then we're going to kind of manually resist it. We're going to add some external load, because sometimes just passively stretching doesn't really change tissue. Maybe we need the physical, again, I might go to the physical therapist and say, hey, can we do, might do a belt version of a hip internal rotation exercise. So just general flexibility is okay, but I don't spend a ton of time on it. Maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes at the end of practice. So I'd say I'm not as much as some people. They do too much and not enough training. That's the balance. All right, any other questions?
Okay, well, help me give Michael Davie one more round of applause.
Thank you.